When old wounds resurface, the fiery clash between a former player's father and Deion Sanders' past. For over a decade, Deion Sanders has lived in the public eye not only as an NFL legend and charismatic head coach, but also as a man whose personal life once played out like a tabloid drama. While much of that turbulent history had seemingly settled into the rearview mirror, the past has a way of creeping back in, especially in the age of social media, where one comment can reignite old fires. This week, Sanders, now known to college football fans as Coach Prime, found himself blindsided by an unexpected source. Zurich Solomon, the outspoken father of former Colorado player Israel Solomon. In a pointed reply to one of Sanders' motivational posts, Zurich reached deep into the vault of Sanders' personal history, dragging into the light a painful chapter, his divorce from Pilar Sanders, long after the dust appeared to have settled. The resulting clash has not only stirred up echoes of a 14-year-old scandal, but also highlighted how intertwined personal lives, coaching relationships, and public perception can be in the modern sports world. A marriage that shattered in the spotlight. To understand the sting behind Zurich Solomon's words, one must revisit the high-profile split between Deion Sanders and his ex-wife Pilar back in 2010. This was no quiet, amicable divorce. It was messy. It was public. And it became one of the most talked-about celebrity sports breakups of its time. Allegations flew in both directions, some in courtrooms, others across TV interviews and social media feeds. Pilar accused Deion of assault and domestic violence. Deion, for his part, countered with claims of infidelity and greed. The divorce took on a life of its own in the press. Even Sanders' children were pulled into the fray. Deandra Sanders, Deion's daughter from his first marriage, famously clashed with Pilar, at one point publicly labeling her an adulterous gold digger. That kind of public family feud isn't something that heals quickly, and it certainly isn't something that's easy to forget when it's been broadcast for the world to see. In the years that followed, there were legal battles, including a $2.2 million defamation lawsuit that Deion won against Pilar. And yet, despite all the bitterness, time eventually began to erode some of the hostility. An unexpected thaw in the Cold War. Fast forward to the 2020s, and the unthinkable happened. Pilar Sanders appeared at Coach Prime's home during the NFL draft, sharing space with her former husband and their children. For those who had followed their divorce saga, this was a shock. Pilar hadn't exactly softened her stance over the years. In fact, as recently as last year, she had taken to Instagram to label Deion a narcissistic bully and post the cryptic caption, "This is what happens when the partner of a narcissist leaves first." Yet, by the time Shadur Sanders' big draft moment came around, it appeared that both Deion and Pilar had agreed, if only temporarily, to put aside their differences for the sake of their son. This truce, however fragile, was something few had expected. And in typical Coach Prime fashion, Deion seemed determined to lean into the positive, using his social media platforms to send out uplifting messages about forgiveness, unity, and rising above petty disputes. The post that sparked a firestorm. Earlier this week, Deion took to X, formerly Twitter, with a motivational nugget that seemed inspired by his own journey. Life's too short to allow foolishness to divide. Fix whatever the mess is between you and someone. Rise above it. It was classic Coach Prime, equal parts preacher, philosopher, and motivator. But for Zurich Solomon, the father of former Colorado player Israel Solomon, the post struck a different chord. Instead of liking, sharing, or ignoring it, Zurich fired back with a blunt and personal retort. "You and your ex-wife good?" That was just the beginning. In a follow-up, Zurich escalated the jab, referencing Pilar's departure from Deion's life and implying that some relationships are best left broken. "Pilar, last we heard, was you're running off the field. I say that to say I avoided folks who tried to destroy me. Fixing the issues can be doing your move, just staying out of their life." The choice of words wasn't just provocative, it was calculated to hit a nerve. In one comment thread, Zurich had revived one of the most painful and public episodes of Sanders' life, attaching it to a conversation that, until that moment, had been about reconciliation and positivity. Why this sting hits different. Social media spats between coaches and critics are nothing new, but what makes Zurich Salomon's comments so pointed is the context. Only weeks earlier, in a lighthearted moment during a Colorado team meeting, Sanders had made a joke about his divorce. When offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur mentioned that Sunday had been his 35th wedding anniversary, Coach Prime quipped, "Sunday was my celebration of my second divorce." The room erupted in laughter. To the players and staff, it was just Coach Prime being Coach Prime, charismatic, self-deprecating, and quick with a one-liner. But to an outsider like Zurich Salomon, it was fodder for a more cutting interpretation. That Deion's past was fair game for public ribbing, even from people with no personal stake in it. The player at the center of the storm. Lost in the noise is the fact that Zurich's son, Israel Salomon, is not just a name on a roster. He's a young defensive back with dreams of making it big. Israel's football journey began with promise. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing 180 pounds, he joined Colorado as a potential walk-on, drawn by the opportunity to learn under one of the greatest defensive backs in football history. But playing time was scarce. After a year without much action on the field, Israel transferred to Hawaii, hoping for a bigger role. That, too, didn't bring the breakthrough he'd been seeking. Then came the offer from Ole Miss, a chance to compete in the SEC, college football's most unforgiving proving ground. The Rebels already had an influx of talent in the secondary, including transfers Kapena Gushikin and Jalen Braxton. So Israel's path to playing time would still be steep. What he did have, however, was raw speed. Multiple camp performances clocked his 40-yard dash at an impressive 4.41, and once even at 4.38. Combined with his track record at IMG Academy, where he logged 45 tackles and 2.5 sacks in 2023, there's no question about his athletic potential. When parents overshadow the player, while Israel's athletic upside is clear, Zurich's social media antics threaten to cast a long shadow over his son's journey. Assassin's Ducktail, a Colorado insider known for his blunt commentary on X, responded to Zurich's remarks with a stinging one-liner. Israel Salomon's pops has always been a weirdo, still embarrassing his son, but that's Lane Kiffin's headache now. The implication was obvious. When parents can't resist inserting themselves into public disputes, it risks distracting from the player's on-field efforts. And in the ultra-competitive SEC, distractions are the last thing a young athlete needs. Deion Sanders today, a man rebuilt. It's worth remembering that the Deion Sanders of 2025 is not the same man who was trading accusations with Pilar in 2010. In the years since, Sanders has battled serious health issues, including a recent fight with cancer that required significant surgery. He's emerged from that ordeal with a renewed focus on what matters: family, faith, and football. Reports suggest that Sanders has even found a new romantic partner, though he has kept that part of his life relatively private compared to the tabloid years. His focus, at least publicly, remains on his role as Colorado's head coach and on guiding his sons, Shadur and Shiloh, through their own NFL journeys. The larger lesson in this drama. At first glance, this dust-up between a coach and a player's father might seem like just another social media sideshow. But there's a bigger takeaway here, about how the past can linger, about the fine line between humor and hurt, and about the role that parents play in their children's athletic careers. Deion Sanders has made a career, both on and off the field, out of projecting confidence, charisma, and resilience. Zurich Salomon's comments were a direct challenge to that image, but they also serve as a reminder that, in the court of public opinion, no chapter is ever truly closed. For Israel Salomon, the hope is that this episode will fade quickly, allowing him to focus on earning his place at Ole Miss without the added baggage of a parental feud with one of the most famous names in football. Final word. In the high-stakes, high-visibility world of college football, every word, whether from a coach, a player, or a parent, has the potential to echo far beyond its intended audience. For Deion Sanders, the sting of old wounds may never fully disappear, but his ability to keep moving forward, to joke about the past, and to focus on the future is part of what has made him an enduring figure in sports. For Zurich Salomon, the The choice remains whether to keep engaging in these public jabs or to let his son's performance speak for itself. Because in the end, football seasons are not decided on X posts. They're decided on the field. And that's where both Coach Prime and Israel Solomon's stories will ultimately be written.